etc. But what's changed is, do you have any flu-like symptoms? Declare it.
We're asking that there be now more vigilant activity around our long-term care homes and retirement homes.
A care home resident in BC has died from COVID-19, Canada's first known death from the disease. The man who died was a resident of a long-term care home in North Vancouver, the center of a COVID-19 outbreak.
He was a man in his 80s, and he had a number of underlying health conditions, unfortunately. So in that risk group for people who are more likely to have severe disease with this. Having said that, I understand he was an active member of the community there, and he will be sorely missed.
BC health officials had announced over the weekend that 2 residents of the Lynn Valley Care Centre had been diagnosed with COVID-19. That came after a healthcare worker at the same center was diagnosed last week. There are now 32 cases of COVID-19 in British Columbia. Back here in Ontario, the government announced 2 new cases of COVID-19, putting our provincial total at 34 cases. Health officials say the risk to the public is still low, but they are preparing for that to change. Lisa Shing joins us live tonight from Queen's Park. And Lisa, officials here are emphasizing once again tonight that people should not panic.
Well, Chris, Health Minister Christine Elliott said today that the province would not be declaring a state of emergency like some states in the U.S. have, like New York. She did say there is a plan in case the situation escalates, but did not give too many details as to what exactly those plans would look like. And all this as questions are swirling around how exactly to protect Ontario's most vulnerable residents, that's the elderly.
First thing we do, the reception will ask that you're not asked, they will require you to use the hand sanitizer.
At this long-term care home in downtown Toronto, employees are taking extra precautions to keep residents safe.
We're asked to sign in, the usual, tell us who you're coming to see, etc. But what's changed is, do you have any flu-like symptoms? Declare it. Have you been out of the country for the last 14 days?
And if those answers are yes, they can't go in. Employees are also told to stay home and encouraged to see a doctor if they have flu-like symptoms. And workers are wiping down handrails and elevator buttons every 2 hours.
All those common areas, so every 2 hours, which is an increase. That's not the norm.
This after more cases of COVID-19 were reported today in Ontario and several more over the weekend. All were older adults.
We don't have community transmission in Ontario.
After BC announced its first death today, a man who lived at the Lynn Valley Care Centre where an outbreak was declared, Ontario officials say the virus is not circulating locally, but that could change. And today, a new measure to prepare the most vulnerable.
We're asking that there be now more vigilant activity around our long-term care homes and retirement homes. They will be screening people at the door.
Dr. David Williams also advises against going to see a loved one in a home if you're sick. Ontario's health minister says the government will also step up efforts.
We are looking at sending more recommendations to long-term care homes, particularly for advanced screening of staff, visitors, volunteers.
And Chris, another development today, Reuters has been reporting that the millions of masks stockpiled by the Ontario government after the SARS crisis for health workers are actually expired. So we put that to the Chief Medical Officer of Ontario today, and he says they are being tested.
All right, well, that is rough news, but we also know that amidst all of this, Telehealth Ontario, the phone line that so many Ontarians call to get medical advice, that is seeing an uptick in calls during this outbreak.
Yes, Telehealth Ontario is seeing an increased volume in calls specifically about COVID-19. The Ministry of Health was able to tell us that since January 25th, it's received close to 3,000 calls. And we'd also asked about wait times to talk to an actual registered nurse. And the wait time right now is approximately an hour, Chris.
All right, well, thanks for this tonight, Lisa. Now, to say it was a bad day on the stock markets would be putting it mildly. At one point, things got so bad that circuit breakers, which halt panic sell-offs, kicked in. The TSX dropped more than 1,400 points right away this morning, triggering a 15-minute trading stop. It ended the day down 10% at just over 14,500. Its worst one-day drop since 1987. On the Dow, a similar dizzying plunge right off the bat, bringing things to a temporary halt. Only the second time that's happened since 1997. The Dow ending the day down 2,000 points to just under 24,000. Much of today's chaos was set off by an overnight plunge in the price of oil. It dropped $10 to about $31 per barrel U.S. We'll have more on the market impacts coming up at 6:30. Meanwhile, the federal finance minister says the government will announce a plan this week to support Canadians who are quarantined because of COVID-19. Bill Morneau says the aid will be meant to help protect them and the country's economy during the outbreak.
We're working on some responses right now. So I think what you'll see from us is a continued approach where, as we have measures that we think are appropriate to roll out based on the facts, we will do so, and you'll see some things this week.
A Toronto City Councillor says he is going into self-isolation after coming into contact with someone who has been since diagnosed with COVID-19. Josh Matlow says that person had returned to Toronto from a conference in Washington. Matlow came into contact with them Thursday. He doesn't have any symptoms, but out of an abundance of caution, he will be self-isolating until March 20th. This weekend, Matlow was at the Ontario Liberal Leadership Convention supporting MPP Michael Coteau. In a statement, Matlow said that because he is asymptomatic, quote, "No one, including my family, is at an elevated risk of having contracted the virus due to contact with me." And we want to take you live to Oakland now. You're looking at the Grand Princess, finally docked tonight after days adrift. There are at least 21 confirmed cases of COVID-19 among the thousands on board, including more than 230 Canadians. And Aaron Collins is in California for us tonight. He joins us now. Aaron, where will the Canadians be taken once they're off that ship?
It really depends on how they're feeling, right? So the Canadians that come off the ship that you can see just behind me, if you're feeling well and they are not showing any signs of COVID-19, well, they're going to be taken on buses to Oakland International Airport, put on that charter that we've heard about from the federal government, and flown to CFB Trenton, where it's a little unclear what will happen to them then. Some may be self-isolated, some may be kept in quarantine at the base for up to 2 weeks. But if you're not feeling well when you get off that ship, you'll be immediately taken, like anyone else who's ill, and they're prioritized to get off the ship first, to a local Bay Area medical facility. So they've got places set up and waiting for these folks if they come off that ship and they're showing any signs of this virus.
And we know that the majority of the people infected on that ship were part of the crew. What will happen with crew members?
Yeah, that's right. 21 people tested positive for this virus on board the ship. 19 of them were crew members. And while the 2,500 odd passengers are going to start getting off the ship, the crew's not so lucky. They're going to be staying on there in quarantine for 2 weeks, also while the ship is disinfected. And we're hearing that that's going to be happening somewhere out at sea.
And I couldn't even imagine being stuck on the ship while all of this was going on. I mean, you've spoken with people who were on that cruise. How are they doing?
Well, I mean, I think they're pretty optimistic. They've taken a pretty Canadian approach to this, stiff upper lip and all of that, but a lot of knitting and Netflix over the last week, and they are ready to get off, even if it means going into quarantine somewhere else. But a couple of them were, careful to say, the crew has done their best to make their stay on board the ship as good as possible. I'm not sure how many of them are going to be getting back on cruises anytime soon, though.
I bet, and maybe some knitting and Netflix in the days ahead. Thanks for this tonight,
I would
Aaron.
think so. You bet.
So the situation on board the Grand Princess, just the latest reason Canadian health officials gave for a frank recommendation today. They advised do not go on a cruise ship at the moment.
Today, the Public Health Agency of Canada is recommending that Canadians avoid all cruise ship travel due to COVID-19. cruise ships have passengers from around the world who may be arriving from areas with known or unknown spread of the novel coronavirus. The virus can spread quickly on board cruise ships due to the close contact between passengers.
And looking overseas, a surge in COVID-19 infections and deaths has forced a nationwide lockdown in Italy. There are now more than 9,000 confirmed cases in the country, and there were almost 200 deaths over the past few days, bringing the total to more than 450. Now, over the weekend, the government locked down most of northern Italy. Well, late today, the Prime Minister extended that to the whole country, effective Tuesday morning. Giuseppe Conte said people should leave home for no reason other than to go to work or for an emergency, and that all public gatherings will be banned. Already, schools, gyms, museums, soccer stadiums, and ski resorts have been closed to contain the outbreak. And we'll have more on the coronavirus for you at 6:30. And remember, you can get the very latest on the outbreak at home and abroad anytime by logging on to our website, cbcnews.ca. All right, well, now for some much-needed good news. We have Colette Kennedy. Colette, tell me, you've got some good weather news out there.
Oh, well, just look at me, enjoying this.
Do you even need that jacket?
I know, it's a little cooler by the lakeshore.
Okay.
That's the only reason. Excellent question there. We've got 10 days to go until the official start of spring. You'd never know it. I mean, yesterday the temperature was a little over 12 degrees, and today we can have a look at where the temperatures are sitting, and first of all, where they went in terms of our peak today. So the daytime highs up to 17 degrees. Now, if you're wondering, oh, is that a record or close to? Actually, our record's in the low 20s from back in 2000. So no, we didn't get close to that, but who cares? Just enjoy it, right? With 17 today in Markham, Mississauga as well, and then some slightly cooler numbers around the region. I want to show you where the winds are coming from. I think you probably have an idea. Southwesterly flow. Now, those are beginning to pick up and getting a little bit gustier, especially around Hamilton. You can see that. But that's the flow that's helped the temperatures. Current readings, if you have a look now, and as I say, it is a little bit cooler by the lakeshore. They're just starting to come down a couple of degrees. Showing you the radar, though, we have rain showers to the north of us, and we have a system that's pushing in. You knew we had to pay for this at some point, so rain will move in, especially as we get closer to midnight. We can show you a broader perspective of this system. There's a lot to come with this. So rain overnight tonight, tomorrow morning. Do expect it is going to be a wet commute, and the forecast board shows you exactly that by afternoon it will, by the way, start to taper off a little bit. We will hit about 10 degrees, but that's going to be early on, because then northwesterly winds, very strong gusty ones, are going to start to drive our temperature down. I'll have more on that, and as to whether winter is over or not, it's not quite done with us. Coming up, Chris.
Oh gosh, well, we'll just bask in the glory that is today. Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
The weather update is brought to you by Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
The man accused of murdering Tess Ritchie in 2017 testified at his own murder trial today. 23-year-old Kalen Schlater is telling his version of events from the night he met Ritchie in Toronto's gay village. Ritchie was later found strangled to death. Ali Chiasson was in the courtroom.
Kalen Schlater entered the witness box wearing a blue suit and a white dress shirt. His defense attorney gets right to it. Mr. Schlater, did you murder Tess Ritchie? Absolutely not, he responds. Did you sexually assault her, she asks. Absolutely not. In the witness box today, he said it was Ritchie's idea for the two of them to walk to the stairwell to hook up. Surveillance footage shows Schlater leaving alone after about 45 minutes. Today, he said she was alive when he left, and that he regrets not staying with her to make sure she got home safe, saying, quote, "I should have stayed with her." Ritchie's family visibly recoiled in their seats when he said that. Schlater appeared to get emotional while talking about learning that Ritchie died of neck compression. His face was red, and he used a tissue to wipe his eyes. He has shown some emotion in court before, when viewing photos of her dead body. Last week, an undercover cop testified that Schlater told him he only pretended to get emotional when detectives showed him those same photos after his arrest. The jury has also heard testimony from a former cellmate turned informant who said Schlater confessed to strangling Ritchie with his scarf. Today, Schlater denied the confession as well as the crime. That same informant testified that Schlater would cry himself to sleep at night, but not because he had any remorse for Tess Ritchie, but only because he missed his family. Defense attorney Lydia Riva asked her client about that on the stand today, and he said he cries because he missed his family. He felt bad for Tess Ritchie and, quote, he was in jail for something he didn't do. The Crown begins their cross-examination tomorrow morning. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
The Ontario Elementary Teachers Federation is set to resume contract talks with the government on Wednesday.
The minister had an opportunity now to avoid further disruptions by reaching a fair deal with ETFO prior to March 23rd. If these talks are unsuccessful, ETFO will resume strike action on the Monday following March break.
Earlier this year, ETFO said it was close to an agreement on several key issues before government negotiators changed positions at the last minute. Education Minister Stephen Lecce made concessions on two major issues last week. Instead of allowing the average high school class size to hit 28 students, he said they would keep it at 23. He also budged on another key issue, mandatory e-learning. He said the government would allow students to opt out of e-learning courses.
ETFO is committed to getting a deal. We got a call from the government saying that they want to come back to the table, so that is good news.
Two other unions representing high school teachers and educators in the French system have now suspended strikes for the next few weeks as well. High school teachers say their move is because of March break. The Ontario Secondary School Teachers Federation hasn't formally bargained with the government since December 16th, but the two sides did engage in informal exploratory talks last week. Now to a labor dispute at the city. More than 20,000 City of Toronto inside workers could be off the job at 12:01 a.m. this Saturday. That could leave recreation centers and city-run daycares closed. Today, the city outlined the critical services that won't be impacted if a work stoppage happens.
Emergency response by Toronto Police, fire services, and paramedic services will not be impacted. The Toronto Transit Commission and the Toronto Community Housing are not affected as they are represented by different bargaining units or are designated essential services. Legislation also requires service at long-term homes to continue.
City officials also stressing that Toronto Public Health's critical operations, such as infectious disease monitoring, would continue in the event of a labor disruption. The city and CUPE Local 79 are continuing talks to reach a deal. Ontario's official opposition is making a push to save a transit discount set to expire at the end of the month. The program knocks $1.50 off fares when transferring GO and the TTC. But the Ford government says it won't renew the deal. Nick Boisvert has more.
I'm going to school from September really straight until May, so that's a significant amount of money on transit.
In her daily commute from Burlington to York University, Sarah Westerhoff rides a GO bus and the TTC subway. Soon, she'll be paying full fares on both services.
I was confused. It seems to be a program that works well. The students who are aware are angry, and I think it's going to come as a shock to many students.
In 2017, the previous Liberal government introduced a $1.50 discount for people moving between the GO and TTC. The idea was to avoid punishing people for crossing transit boundaries. If a rider used the discount every workday of the year, it would add up to more than $700.
That's not good for our city, it's not good for transit, it's not good for city building.
NDP transit critic Jessica Bell is calling for a last-minute reversal.
We do know how to increase ridership, we do know how to improve transit, and it means offering fair discounts where we can.
At Queen's Park today, the Ford government said it had no plans to extend the program.
Our ministry is aware that the contract is nearing its end on March 31st, and that's thanks to the Kathleen Wynne and Del Duca government that did not budget appropriately to keep this program going.
But TTC decision makers say the province must find a way to keep the program alive, and that letting it expire will make it harder and more expensive to get around.
To wind it down, as will happen at the end of this month, before you have a proposal for what you're replacing it with, is a big step backwards.
The province says it is considering new programs to improve affordability and that more details will be available in the coming days. Nick Boisvert, CBC News, Toronto.
It's the first day on the job for new Ontario Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca, and he wasted no time weighing in on the Tories' education plans.
He's a premier and his government are individuals who have not spent any time recently in a classroom in a public system. If you had, you would know that students all learn at different speeds and in different ways. And to sort of very broadly say it's going to be mandatory and now to say reluctantly it's going to be a bit of an opt-out just makes no sense.
Del Duca has previously said he would reverse Premier Doug Ford's education cuts. But amidst growing concerns over coronavirus, the new leader says his party is focused on making sure Ontarians stay healthy.
Fundamentally, the health, the safety, and the security of all Ontarians needs to be our collective responsibility. And so I'd want to be supportive of making sure that there is a plan in place. And I would hope that they would share details transparently and openly with the people of the province relating to their plan.
Del Duca served as the province's transportation minister under former Premier Kathleen Wynne. He takes over the provincial Liberal Party, which has no official status at Queen's Park and just 8 MPPs. Meanwhile, after the break, who's behind mystery clothing donation bins at the Masonic Temple?
Our board has got bigger fish to fry than constantly dealing with a clothing drop box.
That story is coming up for you next. Stay with us. A Masonic temple in Etobicoke says it has spent thousands of dollars in the past year, all to remove illegal clothing donation bins that keep popping up on its property. As Lauren Pelly reports, city officials say it's a problem across the city.
This is the latest mysterious bin, big, green, and illegal.
We first noticed it when we got our first citation from the city to remove it.
That was more than a year ago. Since then, the owners of the Masonic Temple have spent thousands of dollars dismantling bins just like it. But new ones keep popping up, and the city keeps fining the temple.
We see it, of course, when it comes across our table because we've got to pay the bills and pay whoever we had to remove it or deal with the city ordinances to stay within compliance. So our board is got bigger fish to fry than constantly dealing with a clothing drop box.
The temple president says he's called the number on the side of the bins to track down who owns them, but no one answers. According to the city, at least 200 unregistered donation bins are scattered across Toronto. That's making it tough for city officials to crack down.
What happens is they're removed either by the property owner or by us, and they're back in 3 days. So that's a challenge that we're going to have to deal with.
That's not to say that the city won't be sensible and sensitive to the situation and work with property owners, and in particular in circumstances where they are being victimized by companies that are putting the boxes without permission.
This councillor says he's asked city staff to ease off on issuing citations to the temple until a solution is found.
We've contacted the bylaw enforcement office to try to let them know that the circumstances complicated in this case, and we're all working towards a solution.
In the meantime, the temple's president says passersby also need to take precautions.
It's not a charity by any means, so I would warn anybody looking to drop their clothes off at a clothing drop location to pick a registered charity, something like the Salvation Army.
Lauren Pelly, CBC News, Toronto.
After a quick break, we return to our top story, the coronavirus outbreak and its big effect today on stock markets and oil prices.
We are extremely concerned by this.
The TSX down, the Dow down. It was one of the worst days on the markets in decades. We'll break down the numbers coming up next. This was a day of reckoning on markets around the world as the global crisis over the coronavirus continues to worsen. More than 105 countries are now reporting cases. More than 110,000 people infected. Worldwide, the strain on healthcare systems and markets now at crisis levels. And Canada is not immune on either front. Simon Dingley reports.
On Wall Street, so many sellers wanted out of the market that circuit breakers were triggered, halting trading briefly. The Dow sank by more than 2,000 points, the most since the global financial crisis in 2008. On Bay Street, the main index plunged as much as 10%, one of the biggest drops ever. The reason? The coronavirus is pushing down demand for oil. U.S. crude dropped a whopping 33% by this morning. This came after Saudi Arabia threatened to flood the market with its oil. Canada could be among the hardest hit, with an economy still dependent on petroleum.
Days like today are not easy. I began it by speaking with my counterpart in Alberta. They have, I know, emergency meetings coming up today, and we remain in close contact.
Oil was already plunging because of the coronavirus, shutting down businesses and keeping people home. Less travel means less need for oil. As virus fears impact the market, spread of the infection continues to be the main concern, and Canadians are being warned about one form of travel in particular.
Today, the Public Health Agency of Canada is recommending that Canadians avoid all cruise ship travel due to COVID-19.
But there are already 237 Canadians aboard the Grand Princess, which has more than 20 cases of coronavirus. The federal government is sending a plane to pick those passengers up. The ship finally docked in Oakland today.
We will be repatriating the Canadian citizens on the Princess cruise ship off of San Francisco.
They'll be flown to Trenton, Ontario, where they'll be quarantined for 14 days and tested for the virus. Simon Dingley, CBC News, Toronto.
Alberta's premier addressed the slumping prices for oil at a news conference in Edmonton this afternoon. Jason Kenney talked about the impact of an oil production standoff between OPEC, and Russia. He says the province is in uncharted territory.
This could hardly come at a worse time after 5 years of economic decline and stagnation in our province. Economic fragility, combined with a global recession and a collapse in prices, constitutes a profound challenge for Alberta and for Canada.
Kenney says they can't predict how deeply or for how long the price collapse or coronavirus will affect the province. Amid all the fears, hand sanitizer is now a hot commodity. So hot, in fact, it's becoming hard to find at all.
I went to Shoppers and it was all sold out pretty much everywhere, yeah. I went to because I work around Bloor-Yonge Station and it was all sold out. It says they don't even know when the stock will come by.
We went to some places like to the pharmacy and to Walmart, and we haven't seen any in the pharmacies there or at the stores.
Yeah, every time I go to the mall, they're always emptied out. Went to Walmart, couldn't find any, so I basically ran out of everything.
I've been looking for at Walmart, Shoppers Drug Mart, many places. I couldn't find any.
Well, New York State has a plan. In a press conference today that at times looked more like an infomercial, the governor announced the state is now making hand sanitizer itself.
Open the curtain, please. We are introducing New York State Clean hand sanitizer. This is 75% alcohol. It has a very nice floral bouquet. A little, I detect the lilac, hydrangea, tulips. What does it smell like to you? Tulips, yes. Bye.
Looks straight out of Dragon's Den. But no, this is serious stuff. State officials say they'll produce 100,000 gallons per week. Right now, New York has 142 confirmed cases of coronavirus, and the state-developed hand sanitizer will be given to schools, jails, transit authorities, and other government agencies throughout New York. Governor Cuomo warned companies like Purell and Amazon that if price gouging continues when it comes to hand sanitizers, they may sell their version directly to citizens. The Trudeau government is proposing criminal code changes aimed at completely eradicating so-called conversion therapy. It's a controversial practice using counseling-related techniques to try to change a person's sexual orientation, gender identity, or expression. 4 provinces and a handful of cities have already blocked the practice. Ottawa's plan creates 5 new criminal code offenses.
These proposed offenses would prohibit, first, causing a minor to undergo conversion therapy. Second, removing a minor from Canada to undergo conversion therapy abroad. Third, causing a person to undergo conversion therapy against their will. Fourth, profiting from providing conversion therapy. And fifth, advertising the provision of conversion therapy.
Some organizations and groups still support this practice, and they say if the bill becomes law, they'll pursue a court challenge in the name of religious freedom. At this stage, federal opposition parties appear to support the government initiative.
Coming up, we'll show you what your future condo could look like with voice-activated blinds, touchscreen privacy panels, and a hands-free automated toilet. Stay with us.
Voice-activated blinds, toilets with a remote control, closets that steam your clothes. Developer Tridel says these are the kinds of features they're beginning to add to their condos. They've fully tricked out a unit on York Street to show just what today's technology is capable of. But as Taylor Simmons found out, with convenience comes privacy concerns.
What used to seem impossible or a thing of Bond movies is now at our fingertips.
Computer, welcome. Yeah, so the lights come on, the shades roll up. It's all tied into our smart home system.
And for the bathroom in this condo, you can pee in the same toilet as Drake.
Yeah, that's what's pretty special about this toilet. So it's actually the same toilet that Drake has in his own home. Drake has it actually set up to Tupac as opposed to elevator music.
And lastly, we have the master bedroom.
Right, this one's something special. So I can say, computer, turn glass on.
Whoa.
And now the glass goes from opaque to transparent. The idea behind this was that we wanted to provide the best of both worlds in terms of transparency and privacy.
This condo is a lot, but Tridel says their customers want more of it.
They want to be able to add features like digital thermostats. They want to do things like digital door locks and have wireless charging points put it throughout their suite.
What kind of data is being collected and who gets access to it?
But according to this privacy expert, although smart tech can have its perks, it can also come with a cost.
The risk there is that you've got a device in your home that is learning about your behavior, sharing that data with a third party. Brenda in apartment 2B has her temperature set 3 degrees higher than everybody else during the daytime. She's wasting energy. She's costing our building money. What should we do about that?
For Tridel's part, they say they've begun adding their own network infrastructure to their buildings.
On our end, this is mostly just to ensure the security. We don't necessarily do anything with the data at this stage, but it's more just to ensure that the privacy is kept, and that way it's not accessed by other people.
Turning on shower.
Tridel says while certain features will become standard in their units, residents have the choice to opt in to others. Of course, for this condo at least, expect to pay a few million to get them. Taylor Simmons, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, Colette, now my condo looks downright embarrassing. How are you feeling?
Yeah, me too. I could use a couple of those features. I love that glass, turn it on, turn it off.
I loved the fireplace. For me, that was the coolest thing.
Yeah, there are some cool things. Hey, we had some fire here today, didn't we? In terms of the heat, I mean, not a record, but upper teens, pretty great. And I keep getting asked the question, Colette, does this mean it's over? Is winter over? Is it not going to come back yet? And not to be a killjoy, but just let me put things in perspective for folks. In the month of March, we would normally see almost 18 centimeters of snow. And in this month of March, I know it has been a mild winter, but we've seen less than 2. And this winter has been an extra snowy one. So I'd say to everyone, let's just hold our horses, but enjoy it when we have beautiful conditions like this. And what an evening. It's going to be changing. But let me just show you what happened today with our temperatures. When you start off, this was 6 a.m. this morning at 9 degrees. Look at Toronto at 9 degrees. Hey, it's easy then to jump. Let's go ahead and push this forward to about 3 o'clock this afternoon to a high right around 17. If we look at what's happening now, though, we can check out what's going on with the current temperatures. They're starting to come down a couple of degrees. Of course, it was a little cooler down here by the lakeshore, but for all of us experiencing a southwesterly breeze, you could see those winds, those pushing in from the southwest. It does mean they're going to get a little bit gustier overnight tonight, and we're actually going to see them quite strong as we go through the day Tuesday, and that's going to really change things around. Also changing things around, let me show you the radar. This is a precipitation already raining to the north, a few isolated showers making their way into Toronto, but if we advance this into the forecast maps, you can see what actually happens as they become more organized past midnight, or getting closer to anyway, and then some heavier rain and pockets of that coming through for the day on Tuesday. The morning commute, I would definitely allow a little extra time, and then if we keep rolling this forward and we just see how it progresses through the day, afternoon we're already starting to clear, but the winds are going to turn towards the northwest, so advancing this further as those northwesterly winds come in, that's going to start to drop the temperature down into Wednesday, cloud cover, and late in the day maybe some flurries pushing back in. So a look at tonight's forecast map, we are talking about very mild overnight lows, 7-8 degrees, with that rain that's going to be pushing in. And from there, the 5-day forecast shows you this incredible up and down that we have. So that 10 degrees, then falling off tomorrow, very breezy with northwesterly winds eventually. Wednesday, yeah, just above freezing and a little bit of a mix, and then it gets milder again. So, hey, spring's the 19th, officially comes in on the 19th, Chris, and you know, we got to wait this out. And even once we get into spring, we tend to see a lot of these ups and downs.
All right, well, I won't let anyone call you Killjoy Colette.
Please don't. No, I've been getting a few thank yous, which I haven't heard all that much of this winter, other than the mildness. So, yeah, I appreciate those.
Well, I want to come down there and see what all the fuss is about, so I might just join you for your next hit.
Join me. Come enjoy this beautiful evening. It's almost patio weather.
All right, I'll see you in a second.
Sounds good.
This weather update is brought to you by Fairmont Le Chateau Frontenac, the best location for your next spring break getaway in Quebec City.
It was the end of a short era today for the Sussexes. Prince Harry and his wife Meghan made their last public appearance today as senior members of the royal family. We'll have more on the event that was televised live across the UK coming up next. Prince Harry and his wife Meghan made their last official public appearance today as senior royals. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex were at Westminster Abbey for a service marking Commonwealth Day, along with the Queen and other members of the royal family. Briar Stewart took it all in.
It was a grand stage for a final farewell. The last royal engagement for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, a ceremony dripping with pomp and tradition. This is an annual service that celebrates the 54 nations of the British Commonwealth. But this year, some small but noticeable changes. No shaking hands over fears of the coronavirus, and outside, excitement over a couple about to give up their royal titles.
I think it's a good idea that Meghan and Harry keep the royals and have their own life.
I'm more excited seeing Prince Harry and Meghan. That's like all the drama and everything.
And there was drama today too, just before the ceremony. Extra police had to be called in when a protest became violent. Security is always a concern. It's not clear who will be protecting Meghan and Harry in the future, only that the Canadian government won't be paying for it.
It is quite an emotive issue, and then obviously you throw money into it as well.
The security consultant used to work protecting the royal family and says it isn't going to be easy for the couple to get out of the spotlight.
So you are looking at people that are instantly recognisable everywhere they go, even in the quietest corners of the world, people will know who they are.
In recent days, the couple made a number of appearances, including at a high school where Meghan spoke to students and left one in particular smitten.
She really is beautiful, isn't it?
And while the pair plans to do their own charitable work in the future, they won't be representing the Queen.
Meghan and Harry was clearly marked out as the junior royals who are going to play a really major Commonwealth role. It's going to make a bit of a hole in the royal provision for the Commonwealth.
Because the couple, admired for their charm and style, are making the final royal rounds before March 31st, when they'll walk away on their own. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
Fears over COVID-19 continue to derail major arts and culture events.
Yeah.
And Yelena Adzik is here now to bring us up to speed here. So, Yelena, why don't we start with what we heard today?
Yeah.
A few shows going ahead.
Chris, you know, it is something that we're continuing to hear the steady stream. Today we are hearing about Come From Away. You know it. That's the musical, of course, the Newfoundland-based musical that was such a smash hit, won Tonys, and it was set to go in China. And now organizers of the Chinese tour say that it has been postponed in light of concerns about COVID-19 and the outbreak there. Now, they say that they're hoping that the tour will be rescheduled to 2022, but of course, it's difficult to know for sure if that's going to happen. China's got a reported more than 80,000 COVID-19 cases since this first emerged near the central city of Wuhan late last year. So this is something that people were probably expecting. They didn't know for sure that it was going to come through today. And you know, Chris, another one that people are talking about as well, when you take a look at Madonna here, she just recently canceled her shows in Paris. This just happened. She canceled her shows that are set to happen Tuesday and Wednesday, and this is due to restrictions imposed over the outbreak. And the promoter said that, you know, they cited the fact that in France, they banned gatherings of more than 1,000 people as the death toll and the number of the infections continues to rise there. As a side note, you know, I've been reporting about the fact that the Louvre had closed down for a couple days, then sort of indefinitely, and now we've got flooding happening on the River Seine. So that's just causing all kinds of complications. And not to mention that they've got a strike happening with pensioners. So it's just a crazy situation in France at the moment for a variety of different reasons. So Madonna deciding to cancel her show there.
Come From Away is on stage here in Toronto. That's not impacted?
No, that's not impacted, at least not right now. It's just more so this touring production.
Okay, and we also know that there are some huge cultural events that are going ahead as well, south of the border, too.
Yes. Okay, so this is a really interesting one because, Chris, Coachella, they are sticking to it. They're saying, this is the organizers, that Coachella is going to go on in April. And the reason why that one is a little bit more curious is just the fact that not that far away from the location where Coachella will be held, some people are in quarantine right now for having been infected. So this is something that the organizers say that they're taking all the precautions that they can, but ultimately they say show must go on.
And a lot of close contact at that
at Coachella. Well, you bring up a good point, Chris, because this is, oh gosh, this is a festival where people do tend to share the love. Maybe they won't share it so much this year. Oh man, they were going to talk about the other one that's going forward, Cannes Film Festival. PR, kind of a strong, bold PR stance on that front. They're saying that the Cannes Festival is going to go on as well, despite the fact that, of course, that is happening in France. Now, I wanted to bring us closer to home because when we talk about the Junos, that is happening this weekend, Sunday night, okay? And earlier today, they held a press conference, and this was specifically related to the Junos and the virus. The result there obviously being that the show must go on. They say that really the fact that they don't have cases there to cause a lot of worry is something that they're going to keep monitoring. But for now, it seems like they're just kind of going back to what we're hearing time and time again from many doctors and experts coming on, just saying the key to everything is just to keep washing those hands and not always relying so much on sanitizer. But, you know, when you're in those big kinds of events with lots of public, people there, it's important. So this is just a good little reminder for all of us out there. Still go to those concerts, especially in Toronto. Enjoy yourself, experience these arts shows, and do what you feel is right for you and your family. But ultimately, we are very fortunate here compared to a lot of other places in the world.
Absolutely, we are. Thanks so much for bringing us up to speed.
For sure.
Barbie! What they're doing to encourage kids to be limitless and dream big and to pursue their passions is so critical, especially nowadays. I mean, kids are faced with so much pressure, and I love that we're bolstering this sense of self-worth.
Champion Tessa Virtue. She paid a surprise visit today to a group of young skaters at the West Toronto Skating Club. Virtue was working with the next generation of Olympic hopefuls to help boost morale and interest in the sport.
We were all surprised when she just came skating onto the ice. It was really amazing. I was really happy because she can give us pointers for what we can do better next time. And she also told us that just follow your dreams. You can be anything.
Very cute, and hopefully it worked as well. Virtue is an ambassador for the Barbie brand, and she'll be making some guest appearances across the province later this year. Now, luckily today, no ice skating. I came down to check in on Colette here, and it is in fact warm enough to not have a jacket.
We just couldn't play hooky, so we had to get outside at least as part of our work today,
we
right?
Should broadcast the whole show outside. Don't you think? That would be nice.
Let's put it on the books, and we'll make that happen.
I like it.
And the other thing is, Chris, it's still daylight. We pushed those clocks forward an hour on the weekend, so now the sun's setting at 7:16.
Okay.
The other thing about that, it allows us that extra time to keep the temperature a little bit warmer because we have that extra sunlight. So right now we're looking at about 15 degrees. We do have rain on the way, and we could show you our forecast map here of what's going to be happening. So in the evening, the temperature's coming down a little bit, 12 degrees. Yes, clouds have been increasing, and then we'll start to see some spotty showers. There's already some rain to the north of us, some spotty showers. Those will become more consistent towards midnight or after midnight, and we get some rain into the morning hours. Still 8 degrees overnight, very, very mild, and tomorrow 10 degrees, but winds will become breezy, and then the cold front goes through. They'll turn to the northwest, and we'll be seeing gusts 40, 50 kilometers an hour, and that 10 degrees is going to disappear, Chris, because it'll start to be driven down.
I don't want to hear that.
Tomorrow night's going to be a colder one. Just make the most, everything you can, get out of this evening before the rain comes and while we still have these nice temperatures.
Well, and I did bring my sunglasses down here, but obviously I'm not going to have to need them tonight for our little patio night.
Yeah, not too much longer. We've got about 15 minutes or so before we're going to see that sun setting.
All right,
so,
we will enjoy it tonight. Thank you so much for being outside all evening and reporting from
loving it
from out here. And that is our show for tonight. Have a great night, and thanks so much for watching.